Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Cioffi on this. Whoops, let me stop this for a second. Oh, I'm going to start this again. Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Cioffi on this Halloween. Boo. And we are coming up a little early today. I took the day off from doing the video yesterday after recovering from Sunday and Sunday night's major storm, which was quite an event here. We had some places up to 4 or 5 inches of rain here in the downstate. Also across parts of New Jersey, the Hudson Valley, Connecticut got hit hard with rain. We had winds here gusting to hurricane force Sunday night, and we even had some coastal flooding here on Monday morning, which was a big surprise to me because that actually, the strongest winds occurred when the low center went by when it was low tide, but the circulation of this thing going up to upstate New York, the water just stayed high, and when the high tide came in, it just there was coastal flooding in places where they were not expecting it to be. So you learn something new every time with these weather events. We're going to take a look at the long-range pattern and what's going to be happening over the next couple of weeks as we go into the month of November. It looks like the pattern gets somewhat benign for most of the country. Most of the activity is going to be in the west, particularly in the northwest and in the Northern Rockies. But even in the east, we've been talking about going back to a sort of a ridge position in the east. It doesn't really look all that amplified, and it also looks weak enough where we're going to be getting weather fronts coming through every couple of days. So for the most part, no major storms on the horizon, but these things do sometimes change. Certainly can say that safely for the next week or so, and then after that we'll see what happens. But let me run the weather video portion of it here, and we're also going to take a look at the weather in Europe as well, so just stand by. We're going to start with looking at the temperature anomalies. In other words, how far above or below normal temperatures are, starting with last night, Monday evening, and as we move through Tuesday and Wednesday, you can see that area of below normal temperatures across the Ohio Valley and into parts of the Northeast kind of shrinks away. This is because of the fact that we are seeing a bit of a ridge building in the eastern states for the end of the week, and Friday in particular looking very warm. Temperatures are going to be shooting up into the 70s, but it'll be just for one day. If you notice, I'll just back up a little bit. This is Friday morning 2 a.m. and then we get to Saturday morning 8 a.m. and that is a cold front that has pushed on through, and you have below normal temperatures basically along the Canadian border and above normal temperatures to the south. This would suggest a fairly west to east flow, maybe some troughing down in the western states, but you can kind of figure it out here that the jet stream probably does something like this, kind of flat going from west to east when you look at this just based on the anomalies. Now I'm going to take it forward just to show you what we can expect, at least from the standpoint of the last couple of model runs. The ridge in the east idea doesn't look as prominent in the last number of runs. The pattern seems a little more subdued. Yeah, we are going to have some warm days as we move into early next week, for example. It gets above normal again for about a day or so, and then that comes another cold front on Tuesday, and you can see by the middle of next week you have a scheme here where, well, if we wanted to draw how the jet stream sort of looks, kind of looks like this. Trough in the west, a little bit of a ridge, coming up the Rockies here, and a little bit of troughing in the eastern part of the United States. The fact that the cooler than normal temperatures don't extend that far to the south is a reflection of the amplitude of the upper trough, which would be on the flat side. Now, going forward through the end of next week, cooler than average for the most part in the east, kind of gets back to near normal, sort of goes back and forth a bit. End of next week, it gets a bit mild again, only to have another cold front. Now we're into the middle of the month, and here we have another cold front. This is now Tuesday, November 14th, so you can probably guess that the jet stream looks like something like this at this point. A little bit of a trough coming in to the middle part of the country, and then that swings to the eastern part of the United States. Now here is where we would probably see, a ridge like this and a trough like that. So this is now, November 16th. So we're at virtually the end of the period. So it looks like there's, deep troughs along both coasts with a ridge, probably up into the Rockies. That's how you would figure it out in terms of the anomalies with regards to where everything is. Now, I'll go back. We'll start back, and I'll put the actual upper air jet stream pattern starting with today. And you can see how that upper trough just kind of lifts out. A bit of a ridge builds there in the eastern part of the United States, troughing in the west, ridge in the middle, but it's basically pretty much a flat westerly flow. It's not as if the big upper high is building here in the east. It's actually, in the warm periods that we had through September, October, the upper high was like this, okay, and maybe even further north. The actual upper high is centered way back down to the south. So the amount of ridging is limited, and because you do have troughs moving across along the Canadian border, as you see there, this is for early next week. There would allow a cold front to pass through, but it doesn't get too far south because you still have, this ridge, this upper ridge here. So, your jet stream's kind of gently going something like this. That upper ridge is preventing, the cold fronts from getting too far to the south. Overall, the pattern looks kind of benign. There are going to be weather systems coming through, but they won't be doing very much. When we get toward the end of the period, you can see now as we go to the end, we've got those deep troughs along and just off both coasts with a ridge basically in the middle. We'll show you on the wider view with this. Under a pattern like this, you would not see big storms. Most of the action would probably be coming into the west. Deep trough out here in the east, of course. And now that we're, I'm looking at the end of the 2-week period, so who knows how real this may be. This may certainly wind up changing over time. But overall, I'm thinking that the weather pattern is going to be relatively benign, certainly for the next week or so, and maybe even a little bit beyond that. As far as the actual weather is concerned, we'll get back to the U.S. view here. Of course, now that we had that major storm on Sunday and Sunday night into Monday, I actually did take the day off yesterday. I needed to kind of recharge my batteries just a little bit. So we'll go to the beginning here. And there's our warm-up with some showers going up into upstate New York and New England on Thursday and into the Great Lakes. Cold front maybe brings a chance for a shower here Friday. Now, Saturday, you've got a big high building in southeastern Canada at the surface, and that's going to create an onshore flow, and it is going to be cool in the east this weekend. Meanwhile, let's go back. I just want to go back out in the west, and we'll start that from the beginning here. And there's some snows up for the Northern Rockies and up through Washington and Oregon. Rain into Northern California. That's good news. Another couple of weak weather systems impacting California there. We have a front on Monday approaching the northeast and moving through. The high builds in with a shot of chilly air for Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. Then the onshore flow sets up, and here's a little trough that comes out, so you wind up with low pressure in the Tennessee Valley that attempts to reform off the Virginia coast. But again, nothing that strong. If this were deep in the winter, something like this might be a snow event. Notice by day 10, some action up in the Rockies and Plains. But again, we don't see any huge storms here to focus any attention on, as long as we have the jet stream pattern the way it is, in that kind of benign look to it. I'm not thinking that it's going to be too problematic. For my viewers that are here from Great Britain and Ireland and anywhere else in Europe, we can take a look here. Weather also looks pretty quiet in England. Some rain Friday into Saturday, moving on to the mainland of Europe. Some snow there in the Alps and in the Italian Alps and the Swiss Alps. Looks like a weather front coming in a week from today into the UK. Looks like it wants to even make low pressure. I have to learn to understand how the weather works out here. I've seen some really strange things show up on the maps, including this here, where you've got low pressure that develops in the English Channel and then drops southward. I understand why it does that, but not paying attention to these things on a regular basis, it's kind of hard for me to follow. And for those of you interested in snow, we'll put up the snow map. And here's the 10-day snowfall. Not too much, except for in the coldest spots where you would expect it, and in elevated areas. And of course, it's going gangbusters over in Siberia. By the way, those of you who follow the Siberian snow cover, the snow cover growth for the month of October, which is the critical month to watch, has been above average, and that normally would point to colder than average winter in the eastern part of the United States, but that indicator has not worked well the last 2 winters, so just bear that in mind. It would have forecasted colder than normal, snowier than normal conditions through all of the eastern part of the United States in the last 2 winters, and that was not the case, especially in 15-16 when we had the Super El Nino. Now here's the 10-day snowfall for the U.S., and now, some of what you see pops up here Wednesday night, that's in response to the milder air that's coming in. So it's probably, there's probably going to be some wet snow and sleet mixed in with some rain in elevated areas where you see it here up into Pennsylvania and upstate New York, and maybe a little bit of mixed precip in Ohio. Nothing to get excited about, but much of the action is out in the west and up in the Northern Rockies. You see the snow cover through the 10-day period. Actually, the snowfall does not necessarily snow cover. The snowfall is primarily north of 45 degrees north and then on up into Canada, which is where you would normally see it for this time of year. Rainfall for this period going on through the whole 16 days, if you want to look at it that far. A lot of rain for the west. Looks like could be a bonanza of rain of several to many inches from central California northward up the west coast. And then, of course, in the colder air, a lot of this is going to be snow back up in the Northern Rockies. Looks like a concentration of rain in the Tennessee Valley and the lower Ohio Valley. Rainfall amounts for the 16-day period in the blue area would be under an inch. You can see the scale here. So when you start to get into the whites and the wider areas and the purples, that's when you get to 2 inches or more. And again, this is spread out over 16 days. There's no real specific event that we could really focus our attention to. We probably can, though, look out in the west in California and give a view here of what's going to happen in the short term with regards to rain, because of all the problems that they've had with the very dry conditions and the wildfires. But a lot of this rain actually falls through the first 5 days. You can see some 2-3 inch amounts down into central California, and then going east toward the Sierras, and then up the west coast, and then that increases further as we move to day 5 through day 10. So this is going to be some ample rainfall for that part of the world, and the snowfall again we'll start this from the beginning. And does pretty well in from Wyoming, northern Wyoming, up and through a good chunk of Montana, especially western Montana, northern Idaho, northeastern Washington. You can see the snowfalls are fairly substantial in many areas, 1 to 2 feet in some of those darker. I guess those are greens, so the darker greens that you see here. So we're going to switch at this point. And we will get involved in the conversation, which is always a good thing to do. And just stand by while I make the switch. Okay, so I put up a link here in the chat board for those of you who are interested in a really in-depth look at the upcoming winter. My friend DT, as he's known, Dave Toleris, who runs weatherrisk.com, wxrisk.com, and I know he's not exactly a graduate from charm school, but that's kind of his way of doing things. But he's a smart weather guy, and deep down he's a good guy. But his winter forecast is really interesting. There's a lot on there, explains a lot of stuff in technical detail. That if you're really geeky into weather stuff, you'll really like it. So the link is up there I put it in the chat there. I'll put it up one more time. For those of you who didn't see, it may have passed you by, but take a look at that when we're done, which is going to be shortly. Overall, as I said, the weather pattern, looks fairly benign. I just kind of gave a look at the European, which has maybe a little bit more amplitude with the trough in the east in about 9 or 10 days. Sort of showed that last night. Showed it back. Showed it again today. But in terms of what's going to be happening over the next 5 or 6 days, it's really kind of on the level of small scale, except up in the west and in the northwest. And you saw from my friends in Europe and in England, Scotland, and Ireland, weather looks reasonably calm. No big storms for the time being. And usually when you have a major event like we did in the east on Sunday and Sunday night, the weather pattern does tend to calm down just a little bit. So we're going to enjoy the rest of it, because I'm sure at some point it will pick up and get very active again. But stretches where not much happens, we've seen that often enough this year. So we seem to be going into another one. Although we will have weak weather systems coming through in most places every couple of days. I don't see any big snows. Except again up maybe in the Northern Rockies and in the inland areas of the Northwest, and that really is about it. And as far as hurricane season is concerned, I suppose one more system could poke its head through. Let me just check real fast what the Hurricane Center is doing with anything, if they're doing anything. Something way out in the Atlantic that they do mention, but they 1,000 miles east of Bermuda, strong upper level winds, only a 10% chance of development, and I kind of go along with that idea. All right, folks, just check out the website, meteorologistjoecioffi.com. By the way, if you go, the link will come up sometimes at the end of the video, or you'll see these little cards go by. If you're interested, I know with Christmas coming, you might want to have a Joe Stradamus mug or a mug of the Boxing Day storm or a few other things. So they are on there. Help yourself. Feel no obligation. It's on my Shopify site, and you can access it either here or you can access it from my website, meteorologistjoecioffi.com, or from my Facebook page, Meteorologist Joe Cioffi. And by the way, really fast, next Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, I will be at the Middle Country Library in Selden, New York on Long Island. And then on Sunday, the 12th, at 2 o'clock, I will be at the library at Deer Park in North Babylon on Long Island as well. And I'll put up some more details on my Facebook page regarding that. So if you are in the area watching and you're interested, we'll be talking about winter weather, and we can talk about the storm we just had and the hurricane season and anything else you want to talk about weather-wise. That's at Middle Country in Selden next Wednesday at 7 p.m., and then that's the 8th of November, and on Sunday the 12th, I'll be at the North Babylon Library at 2 p.m. On Sunday the 12th. All right, folks, have a great day. We'll talk to you, and a happy Halloween.